Have you ever faced a problem that seemed too big to solve? The kind of problem that makes you stop, take a deep breath, and whisper to yourself, "What do I do now?" Today, we begin a story about that kind of moment, a story that isn't only about solving problems, but also about how we think, how we feel, and how we grow when life asks us to be creative. So, close your eyes for a second. Imagine this. It's early morning in a small city. The streets are quiet, and the sound of footsteps echoes softly through the air. The sun is rising slowly, painting the buildings in gold. And there, walking with a cup of coffee in hand, is a young man named Daniel. Daniel is an English learner. He's curious, thoughtful, and a little bit shy. Every morning, he walks to a small library near his home, not because he has to, but because he loves learning. He listens to English podcasts, writes new words in his notebook, and dreams of one day speaking clearly and confidently with people from around the world. But today, something feels different. As Daniel opens his notebook, he sees a small message written at the top of the page, something his English teacher said last week. Problems are not walls. They're doors. You just need the right key. Daniel smiles. He likes that idea, but deep down, he doesn't fully understand it. How can a problem be a door? He wonders. He's about to find out. Because later that morning, something unexpected happens. The library's computer system suddenly stops working. The staff look confused. The old librarian, Mrs. Hill, walks quickly between the desks, pressing keys, shaking her head. "Oh no," she sighs. "It's all gone." The whole system crashed. For most people, this might not be a big deal. But for Daniel, it's a disaster. You see, he's been helping the library create a small online English learning club, a project he's been working on for months. All the data, all the lesson plans, all the videos are now gone. He freezes. His heart starts to race. He feels that heavy silence that follows bad news. Mrs. Hill looks at him kindly. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I know how much effort you put into this." He nods, but his mind is already running. How can I fix this? This is where our journey begins, with a problem that can't be solved by panic or frustration, but by something deeper, creative problem solving. That night, Daniel walks home under the streetlights, his notebook in his hand. The pages are full of notes about English, but tonight, he doesn't feel like studying. He feels lost. He sits by the window of his small apartment and looks out at the quiet city. He thinks about everything he's done for that library project. All the hours, all the ideas, all the little moments of pride when things worked well. And now, it's gone. He sighs. Maybe it's just not meant to be, he whispers. But then something small happens. He notices his own words. The way he said, "Maybe it's not meant to be." He remembers a line from one of his English lessons, a phrase that said, "Every problem hides a possibility." He repeats it softly, "Every problem hides a possibility." It feels strange at first, but comforting too. He takes out his notebook again and writes one question on a blank page. What if this problem is not the end, but the beginning? That's when something starts to shift. Instead of thinking, "I lost everything," Daniel starts asking, "What can I still do?" Instead of saying, "It's impossible," he starts thinking, "What's another way?" This is the first step of creative problem solving, changing the question. You see, sometimes we look at a problem and say, "Why is this happening to me?" But what if, instead, we ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" That single change, from fear to curiosity, can open 100 new doors. The next morning, Daniel goes back to the library. The computers are still not working, and everyone looks tired. But Daniel walks in with a quiet confidence. He's not sure what to do yet, but he knows he will find a way. He greets Mrs. Hill with a smile. "I think we can still save the project," he says gently. Mrs. Hill looks surprised. "How?" Daniel shrugs. I don't know yet. But maybe we can start small. Do you still have the printed copies of the lessons? Yes, she says slowly. I kept them in the old cabinet. He smiles. Then we still have something. He takes the papers, spreads them on a large wooden table, and begins to sort them by topic: grammar, listening, conversation, storytelling. As he does, he feels something inside him reawaken, a quiet kind of creativity that comes not from perfection, but from persistence. He remembers something his English teacher once told him: fluency is not just about speaking quickly. It's about thinking clearly. And that's exactly what he's doing, thinking clearly, one step at a time. Hours pass. The sun moves across the library windows, and Daniel keeps working. He starts writing new plans in his notebook, not for the system that failed, but for a new version. He draws boxes and arrows, writes notes in English like: Step 1. Organize topics. Step 2. Record new lessons. Step 3. Make backup copies. Each line feels like a little piece of progress, a small win. This is what creative problem solving looks like, not a sudden flash of genius, but a slow, steady movement forward, built on questions, curiosity, and courage. Late afternoon, Mrs. Hill walks over and watches him work. She smiles. You remind me of someone, she says softly. Who? Daniel asks. My younger self, she laughs. When I first started here, nothing worked. The shelves were messy, the catalog was wrong, and I thought I'd never fix it. But little by little, I learned that a problem isn't a wall, it's a puzzle. Daniel nods. A puzzle, he repeats, tasting the word in English, like a new flavor. Yes, she says. And puzzles are meant to be solved. That evening, when Daniel finally leaves the library, he feels something new, not relief, not success yet, but hope. The kind of hope that whispers, you're not stuck. You're learning. As he walks home, the city lights flicker in puddles on the street. He listens to the sound of cars passing by and people talking. He smiles because he understands more English now. He hears words like solution, idea, change, and realizes those are not just English words, they are life words. He thinks about how learning a language is actually like solving a creative problem. You face confusion, mistakes, and moments of silence. You forget words, mix grammar, and feel lost sometimes. But if you stay curious and ask, what can I learn from this? Then every mistake becomes a small door to growth. That's the magic of creative problem solving. Before he sleeps that night, Daniel writes one more note in his notebook. Today I learned that problems are not my enemies. They're my teachers. He looks at the page and smiles. He knows tomorrow won't be easy, but something inside him has changed. He's ready to think differently, to look at challenges with imagination, not fear. And as he closes his eyes, we hear his last whisper for the night. I'll find a way, one idea at a time. The screen slowly fades to black and soft music begins to play. A narrator's voice, calm and gentle, speaks to the listener. When you face your own challenges, remember Daniel's story. The first step to solving any problem is to stop asking why it happened and start asking what it can teach you. Because creativity doesn't begin with answers, it begins with curiosity. The next morning, the sound of rain fills the air. Soft, quiet, gentle. It's one of those mornings when the world feels slower, softer, when time moves differently. Daniel sits by the window again, holding a cup of tea. He watches the raindrops slide down the glass, one after another, like tiny stories falling from the sky. He opens his notebook and looks at yesterday's line. Problems are not my enemies. They're my teachers. He reads it again. Slowly, thoughtfully. Something about that sentence feels powerful, not just as words, but as a way of seeing life. He whispers, if problems are teachers, then maybe I need to start listening. Later that day, Daniel walks back to the library. The computers are still broken, but the atmosphere feels different. Maybe it's the sound of the rain tapping on the windows, or maybe it's Daniel's new mindset, calm, curious, open. He walks straight to the big wooden table, where all the papers from yesterday are still spread out. Grammar, listening, conversation, storytelling. He begins organizing again, but this time, he's not just doing tasks, he's thinking. He looks at the messy pile and asks himself, how can I make this easier? How can I make this interesting for others? Those two questions, how can I make it easier, how can I make it interesting, are small, but they change everything. Because creative problem solving starts with changing how you think about the problem. Let's pause for a moment here, just you and me. When you face a problem in your own life, maybe when you forget English words, or when speaking feels too hard, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it, I can't do this? Or could it be, there's another way? You see, creative thinkers don't always know the answer, but they always believe the answer exists. And that belief is powerful. Back in the library, Daniel starts experimenting. He cuts small pieces of paper, writes one English word on each, and begins to place them on the table like puzzle pieces. Learn, grow, speak, listen, create. He looks at them, then rearranges them. Listen to grow. Create to learn. Speak to connect. He smiles. The words suddenly feel alive. Then an idea comes to him, simple but exciting. What if we make learning English more like solving a puzzle? He says to himself. What if each word connects to another, like building a story? He starts sketching a game idea, something simple the library's learners could use even without computers. A paper-based word puzzle where learners match words, form short sentences, and tell mini-stories aloud. Mrs. Hill passes by and watches him writing. What are you working on this time? She asks with a smile. Daniel looks up, his eyes bright. A new way to learn English, he says. She laughs softly. You never stop thinking, do you? He grins. I guess I just started thinking differently. That small change, that shift in mindset, is what creative problem solving is really about. You see, most people think creativity means painting, music, or design. But creativity is much simpler. It's the ability to look at the same thing in a new way. Like Daniel did. He couldn't fix the computer system yet, but he could create something by hand. He couldn't recover the old lessons, but he could build new ones. He couldn't control what was broken, but he could control how he responded. And that's what creativity is, not control, but response. A few hours later, a few children come into the library. They're part of a small weekend English group. They look around, confused, because the computers are still off. Mrs. Hill starts to explain, sorry kids, today we can't use but Daniel interrupts gently. Actually, we can try something new. He spreads the small cards on the table. Let's play a story game, he says with a smile. Each of you will take 3 cards. On each card, there is a word. You must make a short story using those words. The children giggle and start picking cards. One girl gets rain, dream, and tree. Another boy gets dog, run, and happy. Daniel says, okay, close your eyes. Imagine the story in your mind. And then, tell me what happens. At first, they hesitate. Their English is not perfect. They pause, repeat, laugh nervously. But slowly, their voices grow stronger. One girl says, the rain is big. I sleep. I dream of a big tree. Daniel nods gently. Very good. Now, what color is the tree? She thinks. Green. Very green. Beautiful, he says, smiling. Another boy says, the dog run fast. He is happy. I run too. We happy together. The group laughs. The room feels alive again. Mrs. Hill watches from the corner, her eyes soft. Daniel, she says quietly, this is wonderful. He looks at her surprised. Really? Yes. You turned a problem into a game. You made learning fun again. Daniel blushes a little. I just didn't want to stop, he says. She smiles. That's what good problem solvers do. They keep moving even when the path isn't clear. Later that evening, after the children leave, Daniel sits down again. He looks around the library at the quiet shelves, the scattered papers, the gentle sound of rain. He feels tired but happy. It wasn't a perfect day, but it was a meaningful one. He opens his notebook again and writes. Creativity is not about knowing everything. It's about asking, what can I do with what I have? He underlines the word asking 3 times. Because he's starting to see it clearly now, creative problem solving is not about having answers. It's about asking better questions. That night, as he walks home, the rain finally stops. The city lights shimmer on wet streets, and the smell of rain mixes with fresh air. Daniel breathes deeply. He passes by a small cafe and hears 2 tourists talking in English. He catches some words, ideas, change, solutions. He smiles to himself. Those are my favorite words now, he thinks. Because now he understands them not just as vocabulary, but as life lessons. He whispers to himself, every time I ask a new question, I learn something new in English and in life. The next morning, the sky is bright again. The library smells of coffee and old books. Mrs. Hill walks in with a cheerful face. Good news, Daniel, she says. The computer company called. They can recover some of the data. Daniel's eyes light up. That's amazing. Yes, she smiles, but it will take a few more days. Until then, we'll use your creative games. He laughs. I guess the game is our plan B. She chuckles. More like plan brilliant. They both laugh. Over the next few days, something beautiful happens. The little library becomes full of life again. Students come not just to study, but to play with language, to speak, imagine, and create. Every afternoon, Daniel runs his story card sessions. He listens, corrects gently, and encourages everyone to speak without fear. And little by little, something changes in their English, not just grammar or vocabulary, but confidence. They laugh more. They speak more. They enjoy the process. Because Daniel has taught them, without even realizing it, the same thing he's learning himself, that solving a problem creatively isn't about perfection. It's about possibility. One evening, a young boy named Leo stays behind after the session. He walks up to Daniel shyly and says, Teacher, today I make story with words, but I have no card now. Can I still make story? Daniel smiles. Of course you can. The best stories don't come from cards. They come from you. Leo grins. Then, I say one. He takes a breath. I see stars. They talk to me. They say, don't stop. Daniel looks at him touched. That's beautiful, Leo. Leo nods. Because, when problem come, I think maybe stars say, try again. Daniel laughs softly. Yes, Leo. That's exactly it. That night, Daniel writes again in his notebook. A child taught me something today. When we believe, we can always find light, even when it rains. He closes his notebook and sits back. He feels peaceful, not because everything is fixed, but because he knows how to think differently. And that's the heart of creative problem solving. When your mind learns to stay open, when you stop saying, I can't, and start asking, how can I? Then even the hardest problems become invitations to grow. The narrator's voice returns, calm and thoughtful. In English, there's a simple phrase, think outside the box. It means to look beyond what is usual, to find new ways, to surprise yourself. But maybe it's not about thinking outside the box. Maybe it's about realizing there is no box at all. Every problem is just a story waiting for a creative ending. And you, yes, You listening right now have the power to write that ending yourself. Because your mind is not small. It's wide, open, creative. You just have to trust it. It's a new week. The morning sun shines through the tall windows of the library, and the air smells of fresh pages and coffee. Everything seems peaceful. But deep down, Daniel knows that peace doesn't last forever. Every journey has a moment that tests what you've learned, a turning point. And that moment is coming. Mrs. Hill walks toward him, holding a phone in her hand. Her face looks serious. Daniel, she says softly, I just spoke to the company. The data recovery didn't go as planned. He freezes. Didn't go as planned? She sighs. They could only save some small parts of the project. Most of your work, the main files, are gone. For a moment, everything feels quiet. He hears only the soft hum of the lights above him. All that effort, all that hope, all gone. He looks down at his hands, the same hands that built the lessons, the games, the plan. He feels that familiar heaviness again, that sinking feeling he thought he had already overcome. Mrs. Hill puts a gentle hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, Daniel. I know you've worked so hard. He takes a slow breath. Inside, there's a battle between frustration and calm, between despair and creativity. But then he remembers the words he wrote just days ago. Problems are my teachers. And he whispers, half to himself, then I guess it's time for another lesson. That evening, Daniel walks home under a soft orange sky. His mind is quiet, but not empty. He's thinking deeply, carefully, creatively. He knows the old project is gone. But maybe this is a chance to start something better. He pulls out his small notebook again, that same notebook that's now filled with English words, reflections, and lessons from the past week. He writes, when something ends, it doesn't mean failure. Sometimes it means space for something new. He underlines it slowly. Because he's learning that creative problem solving isn't just about fixing things. It's also about reinventing them. The next morning, Daniel decides to take a long walk through the park before going to the library. The air is cool, the trees are whispering in the wind, and the city feels calm. He watches people walking their dogs, kids playing, and a painter working quietly on a canvas near the fountain. He stops and watches the painter for a while, a young woman mixing colors carefully, brushing softly, changing shapes as she goes. He notices something strange. She makes a mistake. The paint drips, the line goes wrong, but instead of getting upset, she smiles. Then she takes that mistake and turns it into something new. Daniel can't help but smile too. He thinks that's it. That's creativity. Not avoiding mistakes, but transforming them. When he arrives at the library, Mrs. Hill is waiting for him with a cup of tea. You look peaceful today, she says. Daniel nods. I think I understand now. Maybe the project wasn't meant to go back to what it was. Maybe it's supposed to become something else. Mrs. Hill smiles softly. You sound like a real problem solver now. He laughs. I hope so. He sits at the wooden table again, opens his notebook, and starts writing ideas, not just to rebuild the old project, but to design something completely new. He calls it the English Creativity Corner. The idea is simple but powerful. Instead of just lessons or exercises, the library will have creative learning spaces, small tables where people can learn English by doing, not just reading. One corner will have the story game with word cards. Another corner will have picture talk, where learners describe photos and paintings in English. A third space will have real talk, where learners practice short real-life conversations, ordering food, giving directions, telling small stories. And every table will have one question at the center, a question designed to make people think. Questions like, what makes you curious? If you could change one thing about the world, what would it be? What does happiness mean to you? Daniel smiles as he writes these questions. He realizes that creative problem solving is also about asking meaningful questions. Questions that open the heart, not just the mind. A few days later, Daniel presents his new plan to Mrs. Hill. He speaks clearly in English, step by step, not perfectly, but with confidence. As he speaks, we can hear his thoughts blending with his voice. Keep calm. Breathe. Speak slowly. Believe in your idea. Mrs. Hill listens carefully, nodding with a small smile. When he finishes, she says, "Daniel, this is brilliant. It's not just an English project anymore. It's a learning experience." Daniel laughs shyly. "I just wanted to help people learn in a fun way." She replies, "And you did. You solved a big problem by creating something even better." He feels proud, not because everything worked perfectly, but because he grew through the process. The following week, the English Creativity Corner opens for the first time. The library fills with people, students, parents, travelers, even a few teachers curious to see what Daniel has made. At first, it's quiet. Then slowly, the sound of voices begins to fill the room. A woman sits at the picture talk table, describing a photo of a mountain. She says it is big and peaceful. Daniel nods. "Yes. What color is the sky?" She smiles. "Blue, but soft blue." "Perfect," he says. "You speak beautifully." At another table, two young men are playing the story game. Their story is funny, full of laughter and broken grammar, but everyone claps when they finish. And across the room, a small group practices real talk. They pretend to order coffee, ask for directions, and even role-play travel situations. The whole library feels alive, full of energy, sound, and creativity. Mrs. Hill watches from the corner, her eyes shining. "You've done something special here," she says. Daniel smiles. "We all did." As the days pass, the Creativity Corner becomes more popular. People from nearby schools start visiting. Even local teachers come to watch and learn how to make their own creative spaces. One afternoon, Daniel receives a letter. It's from the City Library Association. They've heard about his project, and they want him to give a short presentation in English about it at a small education conference next month. When he reads the letter, his heart stops for a second. A conference? Me? Speaking in English? In front of people? Fear rises. But then he remembers he's faced fear before. And he's learned to see it differently. He smiles nervously and says to himself, "This is just another puzzle. Another chance to grow." That night, Daniel sits at his desk, preparing his first ever English presentation. He writes sentences slowly, carefully choosing simple words that feel natural to him. He practices aloud, "Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I am from the City Library English Club. Today I will share how we used creativity to solve a big problem." At first, he sounds uncertain. He repeats the line again and again, adjusting his voice, his tone, his rhythm. Each time, it sounds a little smoother, a little stronger. Then, he looks in the mirror and speaks again, smiling this time. And suddenly, the words flow naturally, not perfect, but real. He realizes something important. Confidence doesn't come before you speak. It comes after you try. Days turn into weeks. The conference day arrives. Daniel stands backstage, holding his notes, breathing slowly. He looks around, teachers, professionals, learners, all waiting. His hands shake a little, but he smiles. He remembers every problem he faced, the broken system, the rainy days, the moments of doubt. And he thinks, if I could handle that, I can handle this. Mrs. Hill appears beside him. "You ready?" she asks kindly. He laughs. "Ready enough." She nods. That's all anyone ever is. When Daniel walks onto the small stage, the lights feel bright and warm. He takes a deep breath and begins. Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm not a teacher. I'm just someone who loves learning. The audience smiles. His voice is calm, his English clear and natural. He continues, last year, our library's computer crashed. We lost everything, lessons, videos, data. At first, I thought it was the end. But it was actually the beginning. He pauses. The room is silent. He smiles softly. I learned that when things fall apart, creativity helps you build something new. We didn't rebuild the same project. We built something better, a place where people can learn English through imagination. He shows photos of the creativity corner, the kids, the laughter, the word games. People in the audience nod, smile, even take notes. When he finishes, he says, I used to think problems stop us. Now I know they teach us if we listen. The room fills with gentle applause. And in that sound, Daniel feels something shift again, another turning point, not in his project, but in himself. He's no longer just an English learner. He's a creator. Later, outside the conference hall, Mrs. Hill walks up to him. Her eyes are full of pride. That was beautiful, she says. He laughs. I was so nervous. My English wasn't perfect. She smiles. Perfection doesn't inspire people, Daniel. Honesty does. He nods, touched. As they walk away, the evening light paints the city in gold. Daniel looks up and says softly, you know, I think I finally understand creative problem solving. Mrs. Hill raises an eyebrow. Oh? Tell me. He smiles. It's not about avoiding problems. It's about meeting them with imagination. That night, Daniel sits by his window again, just like the first day. But this time, the feeling is different. There's no frustration, no fear, only quiet satisfaction. He opens his notebook, turns to the last page, and writes slowly. Every problem is a story, and I am the storyteller. He looks out at the city lights, takes a deep breath, and smiles. The narrator's voice returns, soft, cinematic, reflective. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. When life gives you a challenge, don't fight it, don't run from it, create with it. Because creativity isn't something you have to find. It's something you already have inside. You just need to listen, think differently, and trust your imagination. The next morning begins quietly. The city is half awake, the sun still soft and golden. Daniel walks to the library, his hands in his pockets, his mind full of calm. It has been a few weeks since the conference, since that moment when he stood in front of strangers and spoke from his heart. Every now and then, he still hears the gentle applause in his memory, not because of pride, but because it reminds him of something simple and true. That courage and creativity grow together. He steps inside the library. It smells the same, like paper, coffee, and quiet dreams. But something feels different. On the wall, near the entrance, there's a new poster. It says in big, colorful letters, Welcome to the English Creativity Corner, where ideas speak. Daniel smiles. The project that began as a problem is now a part of the library itself. It's alive. He walks past the tables and hears familiar sounds, laughter, small mistakes, soft corrections, and the rhythm of new voices learning English together. Each voice carries a story. Each story began with a challenge and turned into confidence. He sits near the window, opens his notebook again, and begins to write his thoughts, not for a lesson, not for a project, just for himself. Every problem in my life used to feel like a full stop. Now it feels like a comma, just a pause before the next sentence. He smiles at his own words. Later that day, a group of students gathers around him. They've been attending his story sessions for weeks now. One of them, a young woman named Mira, looks at him curiously and asks, Daniel, how did you become so creative? You always find ideas so easily. Daniel laughs softly. I didn't always. I used to panic when things went wrong. The students laugh with him. He continues, but I learned something. Creativity is not about being clever. It's about being calm enough to see what others miss. Mira tilts her head. Calm? How can you be calm when everything goes wrong? Daniel smiles. You breathe. You pause. You stop trying to control everything. And you listen not just to the problem, but to your thoughts, your feelings, your surroundings. He looks around the room, the soft afternoon light touching every table. Creativity, he says slowly, lives in the quiet moments, in the spaces between panic and peace. He asks them to take out their notebooks. Let's practice something together, he says. I'll give you a small problem and you'll think of creative ways to solve it, in English. The students nod eagerly. He writes on the board, the power goes off during your English class. No lights. No computers. What do you do? They begin whispering ideas in small groups. One says, use mobile phone lights. Another laughs, go outside and study under the sun. Someone else says, tell stories without reading from memory. Daniel listens, smiling. Good. You see? When you stop thinking about what's missing, you start seeing what's possible. He gives them another one. Your English partner doesn't understand your sentence. What do you do? Mira raises her hand. I try to say it again in a simpler way. Excellent, says Daniel. Another student adds, I use my hands, I show, not only speak. Perfect, he replies. That's communication. That's creative problem solving in real life. The students nod, smiling. They're not just learning English anymore. They're learning how to think differently in English. After the class, Daniel sits quietly, watching the students leave. Each one says goodbye in English, with confidence in their voice. He feels proud, not just as a teacher or helper, but as a learner himself. He opens his notebook again. This time, he writes something new. Creativity and language are sisters. They both grow when we stop fearing mistakes. He looks at that line for a long time. Then he writes underneath. To speak creatively, you must think freely. To think freely, you must let go of fear. That evening, as the sun sets behind the tall buildings, Daniel walks home. The streets are full of life, people talking, cars passing, music playing from small cafes. He listens to the world like it's a classroom. Every voice teaches something. He hears a shopkeeper laugh loudly and thinks, that's what confidence sounds like. He hears a child ask a question and thinks, that's curiosity. He hears someone apologize politely and thinks, that's communication. And all of it, every sound, every moment, becomes part of his English learning too. Because he's realized something powerful, learning a language is not just about grammar or words. It's about the way you see life. When you become curious, brave, and creative, your language follows. Your words become more natural because your mind becomes more open. A few days later, Daniel receives a letter from one of the children who used to play his word games. It's written in simple English, full of spelling mistakes, but full of heart. Dear Daniel, I like English now. Before, I was scared. But now, I can talk to my friends in English. Thank you for teaching me that it's okay to make mistake. Your student, Leo. Daniel reads it slowly, smiling the whole time. That little boy who once made a story about the stars now writes letters in English. He feels a wave of quiet happiness. Sometimes success isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just a small, misspelled letter written with courage. Later, while cleaning one of the tables, Daniel finds a small piece of paper left behind. It's one of his old story cards. On it, 3 words, rain, dream, tree. He laughs. He remembers the day that game began, the day everything was broken, and he decided not to give up. He holds the card in his hand and whispers, look how far we've come. That night, he writes again. When you look back, You see that problems are not interruptions, they are directions. They guide you toward your true path. He looks at the sky outside his window, stars scattered like quiet teachers. He remembers Leo's story again. The stars say, "Don't stop." And he whispers, "I won't." A week later, Daniel is invited to visit a local school to talk about creative learning. He stands in front of a classroom full of students who remind him of his younger self, nervous, shy, but full of dreams. He begins slowly and simply. "When I first started learning English, I was afraid. I thought making mistakes was bad. But now I know mistakes are steps. Every step helps you climb." He pauses, smiles at the class. "And when you have a problem, don't say, 'I can't.' Ask, 'What can I try?' Because the question you ask changes everything." He writes 2 sentences on the board. "Why is this happening to me? What can I learn from this?" He turns to them and says, "The first question makes you weak. The second one makes you creative." The students nod, thinking deeply. He continues, "When you practice English, think like a creator. Don't just memorize, play with words. Don't just listen, feel the rhythm. Don't just speak, express." The class listens in silence. Then one student raises his hand and asks, "Daniel, what if? I still feel scared to speak." Daniel smiles kindly. "Then speak with your fear," he says. "Let it sit beside you." Courage doesn't mean the fear is gone. It means you speak even while it's there. After the talk, a teacher approaches Daniel. "You have a gift," she says warmly. "You make people believe they can try." Daniel smiles humbly. "That's all I ever wanted, for people to believe in their own ideas." As he walks home again through the quiet evening streets, Daniel feels grateful for every problem that once scared him, for every mistake that once made him doubt himself. Because each one became a lesson, a teacher, a door. He stops near the park, the same park where he once watched the painter turning her mistake into art. She's there again, painting the same fountain, but this time, the picture looks complete. Daniel walks closer and says, "It's beautiful." She smiles. "Thank you. It took time, but every mistake added something." He nods. "I understand that now." That night, Daniel writes his final note for the day. Creativity begins when you stop saying, "This is wrong," and start saying, "This is different." That's when learning becomes art. He closes his notebook, puts down his pen, and sits quietly. The soft hum of the city outside feels like music now, imperfect, yet beautiful. The narrator's voice returns. And maybe that's the lesson of this whole story. Life, language, and creativity, they all grow the same way. Through patience. Through curiosity. Through courage. Every mistake you make in English is not a failure. It's a fingerprint, proof that you are learning, exploring, creating. So next time you face a challenge, whether in English, in work, or in life, pause. Breathe. Ask a better question. Because in that question lies your power. Weeks have passed since Daniel gave that talk at the school. Life has become a little brighter, a little lighter, but also busier. Because word has spread. People are talking about the man who teaches English through creativity, who helps people learn not just by repeating, but by imagining, by solving problems, by connecting ideas. At first, Daniel feels shy about the attention. He never wanted fame. He just wanted to help others the way he helped himself. But one morning, an email arrives. It's from a community center in another town. They write, "We heard about your creative English sessions. Would you visit us and show our students how to think in English?" Daniel reads the message twice. Then he smiles softly, nervously, but full of excitement. "Think in English," he whispers to himself. That's exactly what his journey has been about. Not just speaking words, but thinking in them. The day of the visit arrives. He takes a small train to the next town, carrying his worn-out notebook and a bag full of colorful cards. Outside the window, fields roll past like soft waves of green. Daniel feels calm, but his mind is busy, full of ideas, stories, and hopes. When he arrives, the community center looks simple. Old walls, wooden benches, children running in and out, laughing. A young teacher named Arya greets him with a warm smile. "Welcome, Daniel. We're happy you came." "Thank you," he says. "I'm happy to be here." She leads him into a small classroom. There are 20 students, some adults, some teenagers, even a few grandparents. Their faces are curious, hopeful. They want to learn English. But more than that, they want to believe they can. Daniel begins, "Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm not here to teach you English. I'm here to show you how to play with English." The room fills with soft laughter. "Play?" a little boy asks. "Is English a game?" Daniel smiles. "Yes, a game where everyone can win." He walks to the board and writes 3 simple words: rain, sky, music. "Let's tell a story together," he says. "You can use any of these words. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about mistakes. Just speak." For a moment, the room is silent. Then a woman in the back whispers shyly, "When it rains, I stay home and listen to music." Daniel smiles. "Beautiful. What happens next?" A boy adds, "The music makes me dream of the sky." A grandmother says, "The sky cries rain, but the rain grows flowers." Everyone laughs softly, surprised by how easily ideas are flowing. Daniel nods. "You see? That's it. You're creating. You're learning. You're speaking English your way." As the session goes on, something magical happens. People begin to forget their fear of mistakes. They start mixing their own experiences into their stories. A man who works as a gardener tells a story about a flower that can talk. A student shares a dream about a bird teaching her to sing in English. Even the quietest child draws pictures while listening and then tries to describe them in small English phrases. Daniel feels his heart fill with quiet joy. This is what he dreamed of. Learning that feels like living. Speaking that feels like breathing. After the session, Arya walks up to him, her eyes bright. "I've never seen them so active before," she says. "They were speaking without fear. Even the shy ones." Daniel smiles. That's what happens when you stop teaching words and start teaching confidence. Arya nods slowly. She looks at him with admiration. "Would you consider starting a small program here? Something we could keep going, maybe once a week." Daniel hesitates. He has his own classes, his own library project. But then he thinks of what he always tells his students. Creativity means seeing possibilities, not problems. He smiles. "Yes," he says. "Let's do it." And so it begins. Every weekend, Daniel takes the early train to that small town. He and Arya work together, building lessons that mix English learning with imagination, art, and problem-solving. They create exercises like, describe your dream home in English, but only using 10 words. Invent a new holiday and explain how people celebrate it. Tell a story where one word has 2 meanings. At first, it's just for fun. But soon, something starts to change. The students begin using English outside the classroom. They write small notes in English. They talk to tourists. They post short videos sharing their creative ideas. Arya calls it the English Bridge Project. Because each word they learn builds a small bridge between their thoughts and the world. One day, a local newspaper visits the community center. They write an article. Creativity meets language, a new way of learning English. It includes a picture of Daniel holding his notebook, smiling shyly beside the students. Underneath, the caption says, "Mistakes are steps, not stops." When Daniel reads the article, he laughs. That phrase, "mistakes are steps," was something he said without thinking one day, but now it's becoming a message that travels. Weeks later, a man from a nearby college visits the class. He's a language professor, serious and curious. After watching a few minutes of the session, he says, "This is very unconventional. You don't follow a textbook." Daniel nods calmly. "No, we follow curiosity." The professor frowns. "But how do you measure progress?" Daniel gestures to the students who are busy talking, laughing, explaining ideas in English. "Listen," he says softly. "You can hear it." The professor pauses, listens, and for a moment, even he smiles. Later that evening, Daniel walks home, thinking about how far things have come. From a broken library projector to a growing movement of creative English learners. He opens his notebook again on the train and writes, "Creativity grows when we share it. A single spark becomes light when it's passed from one person to another." He looks out the window, the reflection of his face mixing with the moving lights outside. He feels peaceful. But then, something new begins to stir in his heart. A question. A challenge. If creativity can help people learn English, can it also help them change their lives? He decides to find out. A few weeks later, Daniel organizes something new, a small event he calls the Problem Fair. He invites people from different walks of life: students, shopkeepers, artists, teachers, parents. Each person must bring one real-life problem, something small but real, and together, they'll use creative thinking, in English, to find possible solutions. At first, people are nervous. A young mother says her problem is not having enough time to study English. Daniel asks gently, "What do you do every day?" She replies, "I cook, clean, and care for my children." He smiles. "Then use that time. Talk to your children in English. Describe what you're cooking. Turn your home into a classroom." She looks surprised. "That's possible?" "Everything is possible," Daniel says, "when you stop waiting for perfect time and start using the moments you already have." Another man says his problem is fear of speaking English with foreigners. Daniel nods. "So, let's make fear your teacher. Next time you meet a foreigner, don't speak to impress, speak to connect. You're not being tested, you're being human." One by one, they share, discuss, and laugh. The event lasts 3 hours, but no one wants to leave. It feels more like a festival than a class. When it ends, Arya walks up to Daniel and says quietly, "You've started something bigger than you think." He smiles. "Maybe, but it's not mine. It belongs to everyone who believes learning can be joyful." Months pass. The English Bridge project continues to grow. New volunteers join. New towns invite Daniel to visit. People send letters, stories, even recordings of their students' voices, all learning English through creativity. And yet, through it all, Daniel remains humble. He still walks to the same library every morning. He still writes in the same notebook. He still believes in small steps. Because he knows the truth now, creativity is not something you have. It's something you practice. One afternoon, as he sits by the library window, a familiar face appears. It's Leo, the little boy who once sent him a letter. He's taller now, holding a small journal in his hands. "Daniel," he says, smiling, "I came to show you something." He opens his journal and points to a short poem, written in neat, simple English. "I was scared to speak, now I speak to dream. My words are small, but they make me free." Daniel reads it, his eyes soft with pride. "That's beautiful, Leo." The boy grins. "You said English is like art. So I made my art with words." Daniel nods slowly. "Yes, you did." And in that moment, he realizes something. His journey was never just about problem solving or creativity. It was about helping others find their voice. That night, he writes his final note for the day. Every person has a quiet voice inside them, waiting to be heard. Creative thinking is not only for solving problems. It's for discovering who you are. He closes the notebook, breathes deeply, and smiles. Because he knows now, this is what transformation really means. Not changing who you are, but finally seeing what was always inside you. It begins with one message, then another, and then hundreds. Emails, letters, and voice notes from people Daniel has never met from other cities, other countries, even other continents. All sharing something small, something simple, a story about how creativity helped them learn English, solve a problem, or simply believe again. A teacher from India writes, "Your idea gave my students courage to make their own stories. Now, they speak in class with joy, not fear." A young woman from Brazil sends a short voice recording. "I listen to your lessons when I walk. I used to be shy, but now I make mistakes with a smile." A man from Japan writes quietly, "I never liked English at school. Too many rules. Now I see it like music. Every mistake is just a different note." Daniel reads each message slowly, smiling at the variety of voices and accents, the soft grammar mistakes, the heart inside every word. He realizes something: they are all learning English, but more importantly, they are learning themselves. One day, Arya calls him with exciting news. "Daniel, you won't believe this. An international education organization has noticed our project. They want you to speak at their online event next month." Daniel almost drops his notebook. "Me? Speak? At an international event?" She laughs. "Yes, you. You'll share what you've been doing, how creativity helps people learn English." He hesitates. The same nervousness he felt years ago returns. He remembers the old library, the broken projector, the fear of standing in front of others. "Arya," he says quietly, "I don't know if I'm ready." She smiles gently through the phone. "You were ready the day you chose to try." Her words echo in his mind long after the call ends. The next few weeks pass quickly. Daniel prepares his talk, not with slides or data, but with stories. He writes down small moments that changed everything: the day he played the word game with children, the day Mira found her confidence, the day Leo wrote his first poem. Each story carries a piece of truth, that creativity is not about talent or luck. It's about trust. Trusting your ideas. Trusting your mistakes. Trusting your growth. The day of the event arrives. Daniel sits in front of his small laptop, nervous but calm. The online screen shows faces from all over the world: teachers, learners, artists, and dreamers. They come from Japan, Kenya, Spain, Turkey, Mexico, Indonesia, and more. Different accents, different time zones, but one goal: to learn, to share, to connect. When it's his turn, Daniel takes a deep breath. He looks into the camera and begins softly. "Hello everyone. My name is Daniel. And like many of you, I started my English journey with fear." The screen stays silent. He continues, slowly and clearly, with his natural rhythm. "I used to think mistakes were bad. I used to believe I wasn't good enough to speak. But one day, a problem changed everything." He tells the story of the broken projector, the moment that pushed him to think differently. He tells them how he used simple words, imagination, and courage to turn panic into play. "And that," he says with a warm smile, "was the day I discovered creative problem solving." He looks at the small blinking light on his camera, his connection to thousands of people watching. "It doesn't matter where you are," he says gently. "If you can think in English, you can create in English. If you can create, you can connect. And if you can connect, you can grow." He pauses, then adds, "Don't wait for the perfect sentence. Speak your heart first. The right words will follow." For a moment, the online chat box stays quiet, then suddenly fills with messages from around the world. "Beautiful message. Thank you for this reminder. You made me cry. I'll start speaking without fear from today." Daniel smiles. He feels the same feeling he felt that night in the old library, the quiet, humble power of connection. After the event, invitations begin to arrive. Teachers from different countries ask him to share his methods. Language podcasts invite him for interviews. One school in Africa even names a small classroom the Creativity Corner, inspired by his idea. Daniel feels grateful and a little overwhelmed. He's just one person with one notebook and one simple belief that English can be more than a subject. It can be a journey. But as his message spreads, Daniel begins to notice something. Not everyone finds creativity easy. Many people write to him saying, "I understand your idea, but I don't know how to be creative." Or, "I'm afraid my ideas aren't good enough." Daniel decides to help them in a new way. He starts creating short online lessons, small stories that teach creative thinking in simple English. He records them in his calm voice, speaking slowly and naturally. He says things like, "Don't try to sound perfect. Try to sound real, and when you face a problem, ask a question, not with fear, but with curiosity." People begin calling his channel Fluent English Journey. And soon, learners from all over the world start joining his lessons. One evening, as Daniel reads comments on his videos, he notices one from a woman in Turkey. She writes, "Your stories make me feel calm. I used to hate English listening practice. Now I listen before sleep. Your voice teaches me more than words." He reads it again, smiling softly. He never thought his calm storytelling voice, once unsure and hesitant, could help others find peace. He writes back, "Thank you for listening. Remember, English is not just a language. It's a bridge between hearts." Months pass. The channel grows. Daniel's stories are translated into many languages. People begin using his creative exercises in schools and community centers. He receives a message from a teacher in Mexico. "My students made your problem fair. They spoke English all day, not from memory, but from imagination." Another message comes from a student in Egypt. "I used to think in my language first, then translate. But now I think directly in English. It feels like my second home." Daniel smiles. He never planned to become a global teacher. He only wanted to share what helped him survive a difficult moment. But that's what ideas do. They travel faster than you imagine. One night, Daniel sits by his window, looking at the city lights. He remembers the early days, the small library, the nervous boy afraid to speak. Now he speaks to thousands. He whispers to himself, "Life is funny, isn't it? You fix one broken thing, and somehow it fixes you too." He opens his old notebook. Many of its pages are filled now with ideas, lessons, stories, reflections. But one page still waits, blank, ready for what's next. He writes at the top, "New project, Global Creativity Circle." His idea is simple. A virtual group where learners from around the world meet once a week to speak English, solve problems, and share creative thoughts. No exams. No pressure. Just real people, real voices, real growth. He shares the idea online, and within days, hundreds of people sign up. When the first session begins, Daniel logs in early. The screen fills with faces, people from all over the world, smiling, waving, saying hello in English. "Can you all hear me?" Daniel asks. "Yes," echoes around the digital room, in many accents and tones. He smiles. "Then let's begin our first journey together." He gives them a simple challenge. Imagine the world loses all colors tomorrow. You can keep only one. Which one and why? Everyone laughs at the strange question, but then the answers begin to flow. "I'll keep blue, it's calm. I'll keep green, it's life. I'll keep yellow, it's hope." And as they speak, Daniel notices something. They're no longer afraid of grammar or pronunciation. They're thinking in English and feeling in English. The session ends with laughter and friendship. Before logging off, Daniel says, "Remember, everyone. English is not just about communication, it's about creation. When you create, you connect. When you connect, you grow. As he closes his laptop, he feels the quiet joy of purpose. He's no longer just teaching, he's sharing life. Later that night, he writes his reflection. I used to believe creative problem solving was about fixing things. Now I know it's about connecting people. Every idea, every story, every word becomes a bridge. He looks outside at the moonlight and smiles. Somewhere in the world, someone is listening to his story, repeating his words, learning English with hope. And that thought fills him with peace. Because in the end, Daniel realizes creativity is not something you keep. It's something you give. And the more you give, the more your world and your words begin to grow. It's late at night. The city is quiet, only the hum of distant cars and the soft sound of rain against the window. Daniel sits at his desk, his notebook open, the lamp glowing gently. The room feels peaceful, but his mind is full. He's thinking about everything that has happened, the messages, the event, the community, the laughter. It all feels unreal. A few years ago, he was just an English teacher in a small town, struggling to fix a broken projector. Now he's part of something much bigger. But tonight, a strange question whispers in his mind. Why did all this begin? He opens the first page of his old notebook, the one where everything started. The paper is yellow now, the handwriting shaky. At the top, it says, "How can I help my students learn with joy?" He touches the word softly, almost like touching a memory. And suddenly, it all comes back, the fear, the frustration, the silence in the classroom before that first creative lesson. He smiles. Maybe I was the one who needed to learn joy first. Daniel looks around his room. There's the same old wooden table, the same coffee mug, the same pen that ran out of ink years ago. But he feels different now. He has changed not because he became famous or successful, but because he learned how to see differently. He remembers something Arya once told him. Creativity is not just about making new things. It's about seeing old things with new eyes. He whispers the words aloud, slowly, letting each one sink in. Seeing old things with new eyes. He stands up and walks to the window. The rain is falling softly on the street below. Each drop shines under the streetlight like small pieces of light falling from the sky. He thinks about his students, Mira, Leo, the children who laughed during the first creative class. He wonders where they are now. Maybe Mira is teaching somewhere. Maybe Leo is writing stories in English. Maybe one of those children has started their own journey of learning. He smiles quietly. Maybe they're out there helping others the same way, he whispers. And in that moment, Daniel realizes something simple but powerful. Creativity is not something you teach. It's something you pass on. A soft knock at the door breaks his thoughts. It's Arya. Still awake? She asks, smiling. He laughs softly. Couldn't sleep. She walks in and sits beside him. You've been working too much again. Daniel shakes his head. No, just thinking about how all of this started. Arya looks at the notebook on the table. The famous notebook, she says playfully. The one that started a movement. He smiles. I was just thinking back then I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to help. Arya nods. That's what made it work. They sit quietly for a while, listening to the rain. Then Daniel asks softly, Arya, do you think people really change because of creativity? Or do they just discover who they already were? She thinks for a moment. I think creativity doesn't change who you are, she says. It just reminds you of your voice, the one you forgot you had. Daniel nods slowly. He feels those words deep inside. For so long, he thought creativity was about finding answers. Now he sees, it's about finding your voice. He remembers how his students once feared speaking English. They worried about grammar, pronunciation, mistakes. But when they played, imagined, and created, their fear disappeared. They were no longer students trying to be correct. They were storytellers. And storytelling, he realizes now, is what English was meant for. Not just communication, but connection. Not just rules, but rhythm. Not just learning, but living. He opens his notebook again and begins to write. The goal of English learning is not perfection. It's connection. When we connect, we remember that language is alive. He pauses. The pen stops moving, but his mind keeps going. He thinks of all the voices he has heard, the quiet student from Japan, the confident teacher from India, the shy woman from Brazil. Different accents, different rhythms, but all telling the same story. I want to be understood. And that, Daniel realizes, is the heart of language. Not to sound native, not to be flawless, but to be understood. He writes again. Fluency is not fast speaking. Fluency is free speaking. He underlines the word free twice. Because that's what he's been searching for all along, not just fluent English, but freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from judgment. Freedom to be creative. Arya stands up and looks at his notebook. You should share that, she says. People need to hear it. He looks up. You really think so? She smiles. Daniel, everything you've shared came from your heart. That's why people listen. They don't just hear your words, they feel them. Her voice is gentle, but full of truth. Daniel feels a warmth in his chest, that same spark that once started this journey. He nods slowly. Yes, maybe it's time to write something new. Days pass. Daniel begins to write what will become his next series, Creative English Reflections. Short, simple lessons about how to think, feel, and grow in English. Each one starts with a story and ends with a reflection. He records them in his soft, cinematic voice. Don't rush your English. Let it breathe. Let it grow with you. Every mistake is just a step toward your next idea. The world doesn't need perfect English. It needs your real voice. Each episode becomes a mirror for learners, helping them not just study English, but live it. One evening, after uploading a new video, Daniel receives a message from Mira. He hasn't heard from her in years. She writes, Daniel, you probably don't remember me. I was your student, the shy one who used to hide behind books. I just wanted you to know. I'm now teaching English to children. And guess what? We start every class with a creative game, just like you did. Daniel's eyes fill with quiet tears. He reads the message again and again. It feels like everything has come full circle. He whispers, she's passing it on. Later that night, he writes in his notebook, a teacher's success is not measured by how many students remember their lessons, but by how many continue the journey. He closes the notebook gently. The rain has stopped. The city lights reflect softly on the wet streets outside. And Daniel realizes something profound, something simple, but true. All along, the real creative problem he was solving was himself. He spent years helping others find their voice, only to discover that in doing so, he had found his own. The quiet, uncertain teacher who once feared speaking in English had become a storyteller in the same language that once made him afraid. He smiles. That's the power of growth. That's the magic of creativity. He whispers to himself, fluent English is not about perfect grammar. It's about fluent living. He looks at his reflection in the window, calm, older, wiser. And for the first time in a long time, he doesn't see a teacher. He sees a learner, still growing, still curious, still human. He nods to himself. The journey never ends, he says softly. The room grows quiet again. Daniel picks up his cup of tea, takes a slow sip, and smiles. In the silence, he feels something peaceful, not excitement, not pride, but gratitude. Gratitude for every mistake, every fear, every broken moment that led him here. Because without them, he would have never found his creativity. And without creativity, he would have never found connection. It's early morning again. The light of dawn gently fills the room, soft and golden. A cup of tea sits on Daniel's desk, steam curling slowly upward, like a quiet reminder of calm beginnings. He opens his window and breathes in the cool air. The rain has stopped, and the streets below are shining clean, peaceful, alive. It feels like a new chapter, though the book is still the same. Daniel sits down and opens his notebook one last time. There's only one blank page left. He smiles and says softly, "Every ending is just another beginning." He takes his pen and writes the title at the top, "Final Reflection. The Journey Continues." He begins to speak aloud as he writes, his voice calm, slow, and full of emotion, as if he's not only talking to himself, but also to you, the listener, the learner, the dreamer sitting somewhere far away, listening with quiet curiosity. He says, "When I first started learning English, I wanted to sound perfect. I wanted to speak without mistakes, without pauses, without fear. But as time passed, I learned something different, something more beautiful. Fluency is not about speed. It's about sincerity. It's about speaking with meaning, not just with words. And creativity, it's not about making new things. It's about seeing what's already around you in a new way. That's what this whole journey has been about. Not finding the right answers, but finding better questions." He pauses. The sound of birds fills the silence. Then, slowly, he continues. "I've realized that every problem we face, in English, in life, in love, in work, is actually an invitation to see ourselves differently. When something breaks, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that something new wants to begin. When I lost all my files in the library that day, I thought I had lost everything. But that problem became the door that opened my entire future. It made me think differently, act differently, become different. That's what creative problem solving really means. It means saying, I may not know how yet, but I will find a way." He leans back in his chair, looking at the morning sky through the window. The light is soft, almost golden now. He smiles. "And I think," he says softly, "that's the same with learning English. You will forget words. You will make mistakes. You will feel stuck. But every mistake teaches you something. Every pause gives you time to breathe. Every small success gives you the courage to continue. Don't let the fear of being wrong stop you from being real. Speak anyway. Write anyway. Try anyway. Because every time you use English, even when it's not perfect, you are becoming more fluent, more confident, and more you." Daniel closes the notebook slowly. He touches the cover and smiles, not with pride, but with peace. He whispers, "It's funny. I started this to help others learn English. But in the end, it was English that helped me learn about life." He walks to the window. The street below is waking up, people walking, cars passing, laughter echoing from a small cafe. He watches for a moment, feeling that gentle joy that comes from quiet understanding. Then he turns back to his desk and turns on his microphone. He's about to record one final message, not as a teacher, not as an expert, but as a friend speaking from the heart. He presses the record button. A small red light glows. He takes a slow breath and begins. Studio microphone asterisk, "Hello, my friend. If you're listening right now, I want you to know something important. This journey you're on, this long road of learning English, is not just about language. It's about finding your courage, your voice, and your way of expressing who you are. There will be days when you feel lost. Days when you think, I'll never be fluent. Days when you want to give up. But please remember this. You are not behind. You are becoming. Every quiet day of listening, every short sentence you speak, every word you forget, and then remember again, they are all part of your story. Your story of growth. Your story of patience. Your story of creativity. You are not learning English to be perfect. You are learning English to connect with people, with ideas, with the world. So, don't compare your journey to anyone else's. Speak your English your way, because your voice matters. And every time you speak, you make the world a little smaller, a little kinder, a little more connected. Asterisk. He stops recording. The room falls silent again, but this time, it's a peaceful silence, a silence filled with meaning. He saves the recording and looks out the window once more. The city is fully awake now. People moving, living, trying, just like him. He smiles softly. He whispers, "Fluent English journey continues." The camera slowly pulls back, showing Daniel sitting by his window, the golden morning light surrounding him, his notebook closed beside the cup of tea. The music rises, slow piano, soft strings, warm and hopeful. And a calm voice, the same narrator who began the story, speaks one final reflection to the audience. Maybe the secret to solving problems in language and in life is not about being clever, but about being kind. Kind to yourself. Kind to your mistakes. Kind to your journey. Because creativity grows where patience lives. And English, like life, blooms slowly, one word, one idea, one moment at a time. So when you face a problem, don't run from it. Listen to it. Talk to it. Let it teach you something new. Because every challenge you face is a teacher in disguise. The music fades slowly. The final screen appears. Don't stop. Every quiet day of practice builds your future voice. Keep listening. Keep speaking. Keep moving forward. You're growing even when it's silent. The screen fades to black. Then, the last gentle whisper, "See you in the next story," on Fluent English Journey.